Today we gather again for the water ceremony. Like many Unitarian Universalist congregations, the second Sunday in September marks the beginning of the church year in a formal way. Most congregations in our movement stay open during the summer months, but are not as busy as other months of the year. When I became a Unitarian Universalist about 35 years ago, most of our congregations closed down for the summer season. Most church buildings stood empty from the General Assembly in the middle or late of June to the Sunday after Labor Day in September. There was something significant to this in our past. Many Unitarians in New England took off the summer months from the places they lived most of the year. Some retreated to cabins in Maine or New Hampshire. Others had places near the ocean. That was what the more affluent did. For the New England farmers, summer was the busiest season. New England winters go on. In my last year serving a church in New Hampshire, the snow began falling at intervals, 1 or 2 days between snowfalls, from the middle of November to late April. In other words, of the 10 months of the church year, only 4 were free of snow. Old Yankees said that church year was the way things had been when they were younger. New England farmers in times gone by could not plant until May and had to harvest in early October at the latest before the first frost. Old Yankees told me that in their youth, the busiest time of the year ran from September to October, when the apples had to be picked before the frost. The church opened its doors, but many in the congregation were very tired from the beginning of the harvesting time. Our opening hymn today draws from this connection with verses that allude to the season, in verses like, "Harvest the power, seeds for the sowing are laid in store, the Spirit growing in all, winter to spring, summer to fall." There is a link with the cycles of agricultural production. So we Unitarian Universalists still draw from the traditions of New England in bygone days when our annual cycle begins today. We gather as a congregation at this time to mark the ending of one season and the beginning of another, to acknowledge our renewed commitment to the experience of being a religious community in anticipation of other regular markers of this time. We know that we will reflect in the next year on some Christian, Jewish, neo-pagan, and other religious holy days, albeit from our context. We will continue with the welcoming congregation recertification process and the developmental ministry process. We will experience the joy of living in community and sometimes share losses and grief. The cycle of life will be with us. We will examine the joys and challenges of being human. We will endeavor to understand our movement's history and look forward to a future. We will advocate for societal change and broaden the pursuit of justice. Our nation will make a momentous decision in the next 2 months. Whatever happens, this community will be here to persevere, to offer hope. As a community, we will gather weekly for Sunday services, learn and discuss important matters through Sunday Breakfast Forum, welcome new members, educate young people, participate in events to encourage a just and equitable society, take part in rites of passage, slurp coffee together, sing and create meaningful music, meet to further the work of this congregation, This is the congregation that, while founded on the ongoing search for truth and meaning, is not only defined by ideals and that quest. This is also a caring community. The developmental ministry task calls us to encourage congregation and kindness in this congregation. Kindness. Paradoxically, in my experience of 25 years, soon to be 25 years in the ministry, this is one of the most caring congregations that I have ever been involved with. If someone is ill or lonely or troubled or grieving or in any other difficult psychological, spiritual, or emotional state, you reach out. You want your minister to reach out to that person. You care for one another. As your minister, I hear stories of unkindness in the past one moment and great caring in the next. This morning marks the beginning of the third year with you, and my second year as your developmental minister. I know that there is love that endures in the depth of this community's being. It is expressed in the care that you extend to one another. And this year we will care for each other, nurtured in love and conscience refined. This year we will be making decisions as a congregation, thinking about the future, planning for your shared ministry. You will be considering different notions of church and what works best with the changing situations. You will review your past and consider your present. In all this very busy year, expect to celebrate Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter. Look forward to the church auction. Look forward to opportunities for this congregation to engage in the work of social justice. We gather to live this spiritually ambiguous faith, to learn, to advocate, to sing, to meditate, to explore. This church year, we will do all of that and more. I'm looking forward to it. In closing, I would like to share a reading by Priya Parker. She's a specialist in bringing people together. I didn't even know that there were people who were specialists in gathering, so this is a surprise. But this is a fairly good reading, I think. Maybe I should have put this in the reading section. She writes, "Why do we gather? We gather to solve problems we cannot solve on our own. We gather to celebrate, to mourn, and to mark transitions. We gather to make decisions. We gather because we need one another. We gather to show strength. We gather to show honor and acknowledge. We gather to welcome, and we gather to say goodbye. And to Parker's words, I might add, we gather because we care spiritually about this world and all our people. So be it. Blessed be. Amen."